Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. And today I'm going to be talking about central bank digital currencies and how those might threaten or disrupt Bitcoin. It's something I've heard a lot about. Folks will ask me via email, direct message, or on Twitter. They're like, hey Dan, what about central banks creating their own digital currencies? Will that hurt Bitcoin? Or is it no big deal? Or what's going on there? So today I'm going to cover the newsletter that I previously wrote and distributed to my mailing list yesterday. I'm going to take that and extrapolate a little bit more with a screen share and sort of have myself talk over the different aspects of what I wrote up. So with that, I'm going to go switch to the next scene. Okay. All right. So this is my newsletter. It's called the Held Newsletter. It's on Substack, so you can subscribe. You'll get this content the day before. So this comes out, this stream is coming out Friday. On Thursdays, the email newsletter goes out. All right, so Bitcoin versus the central bank digital currencies. I, of course, felt like it was applicable to lead with an image of Karsten, the head of the head of the BIS, because he looks like a final boss of a video game. Okay, so you've probably seen headlines like this. China's digital currency could challenge Bitcoin and even the dollar. So when you see something like this, you're like, okay, that piques my interest because China is an up and coming sort of like big global power. Not up and coming, it's a global power, but a contender for, being a world reserve currency. And so I think this idea of central bank digital currencies is kind of a funny one because, folks, especially journalists, see this and they're like, oh, okay, this could be a threat to the existing incumbents. Well, it's actually a little bit different than that. Central bank digital currencies are currencies that enable customers and businesses to directly interface with it. So right now, like I can't go and have a bank account with the Fed. But in this sort of world, I could, or I could hold digital versions of like dollars issued directly from the Fed, and the Fed controls that ledger. So it would be way different than now versus the Fed working with like your banks and then those banks working with you. And it's a pretty drastic change. It's not just being a world reserve currency. It's about control. It's about the central bank literally owning the ledger that everyone uses, which is pretty insane. The idea became more popular after the rise of popularity of stablecoins like Tether and others more centralized ones. Also with Libra. So here's Facebook's Libra project. As you can read here, a simple global payment system. So kind of the same thing. Libra would tokenize or essentially have a basket of different world reserve currencies like the euro, yen, pound, and the dollar. And then have this, stable coin or essentially a basket fiat coin. And that would enable cheaper payments and supposedly more access to the global financial system, supposedly. And then during COVID, countries struggled to issue checks directly to consumers and businesses. So here's a great article headline: Glitches prevent $1,200 stimulus checks from reaching millions of Americans. So central banks and their want to distribute money due to the crisis to help those in need, they found great difficulties in actually getting even checks. They're sending out paper checks. It's the year 2020. And so they felt like, oh, central bank digital currencies, this makes sense to solve that problem. A few other things here. This is this is Rishi. He's the member of parliament in the UK. And they just put out the Treasury over there put out an interesting research piece on if central banks can issue their own digital currencies and stable coins. So governments across the world are thinking about this, from China to the UK to the US. Ashley Langquist has put together a really nice Google Doc where she's compiled a bunch of this information. So I'd recommend you click on that. And if you want to dig in really deep, click on that and go into it. So without further ado, this is, essentially central bank digital currencies came about because of the rise of popularity of Libra. COVID, they wanted to distribute value more quickly and as a way to shift away from cash. So in China and other countries, they're trying to ban cash in an effort to exert more control over the economy under the guise of, making sure that bad people don't use currency the bad way. And here's a U.S. stimulus check here. I felt like it was I'm not sure if many people have seen this, but I think on the real one, it's actually signed by Trump. All right, so along comes Bitcoin. Now, why is Bitcoin different than central bank digital currencies? It makes sense that folks are confused. Back when people used to say, "Oh, Bitcoin is meant for payments," they hear central bank digital currencies are solving to make payments cheaper and to enable reconciliation to happen faster or settlement happen faster. They go, "Oh, well, isn't that the problem that Bitcoin is solving?" Not really. So digital versions of fiat have existed far before Bitcoin and central bank digital currencies. Bank accounts, brokerages, PayPal, those all are digital versions of the dollar. And then if we extend that definition to digital cash or cryptocurrency, we find that Bitcoin is actually pretty late to the game. And I find this quote from Satoshi pretty funny. This is Satoshi in February 15th, 2009. And he says, "A lot of people automatically dismiss e-currency as a lost cause because of all the companies that failed in the 1990s. I hope it's obvious it was only the centrally controlled nature of those systems that doomed them. I think this is the first time that we're trying to build a decentralized, non-trust-based system." And that's really key, that Bitcoin wasn't just the first version. Even Satoshi thought he was late. It was 40 years worth of work. And sorry, let me get the prehistory here. So I worked on this chart with a designer that I hired to simplify and clean up the prehistory of Bitcoin, or what led up to Bitcoin's creation. And this was originally inspired by Ansel Linder. He had a great chart similar to this. I cleaned it up a little bit, made it a little bit more, a little bit simpler. So here we can see that Bitcoin, when it launched in 2008, was actually the culmination of a lot of different technologies that were put together. We've got like Nick Szabo and BitGold, Hal Finney, reusable proof of work, Bram Cohen with BitTorrent. You've got different aspects, Anaback with Hashcash. All of these kind of built upon each other to create Bitcoin. And Bitcoin wasn't there to solve the problem of making payments cheap. It's not trying to be a cheaper PayPal. It was built to enable true ownership of money without having to trust a government or third party. And if we pull up another quote from Satoshi, I think this hammers the point home very clearly. The root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that's required to make it work. A central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. Banks must be trusted to hold our money and transfer it electronically, but they lend it out in waves of credit bubbles with barely a fraction in reserve. And what Satoshi's talking about here is the trust that's built into the system. Right now, you have to trust an application that interfaces with a commercial bank, which interfaces with the treasury, which interfaces with the central bank, and then the treasury. There's trust along that whole stack. With Bitcoin, you don't need to have that trust. That's what Bitcoin solves, is trust in the monetary policy and trust in the transaction mechanism. I don't want to have to trust anyone or trust any third party when I hold my money or transfer it. And that's what Bitcoin allows. It's trustless. Since the dawn of humankind, governments have sought to seize and censor the transactions of their citizens. Bitcoin breaks that power over citizens by enabling anyone, anywhere, with whomever they like to transact with their wealth without having to trust anyone else. That's ultimately the magic. So central bank digital currencies, they're not really competitive with Bitcoin. Bitcoin solves the problem of us having to trust a central bank. Central bank digital currencies are just exerting more power of the central bank by developing a direct relationship with citizens and businesses. They're actually pretty fucking scary. If you look into it, for the supposed marginal benefit and efficiency, and since when are governments efficient, it would extend their control into every single transaction. So with central bank digital currencies, governments would be able to automatically tax a transaction. Governments would be able to allocate funds away from specific individuals or stop your payment. For example, if you were a Trump supporter, they could mute your payment or stop you from being paid. That's crazy. We're getting into insane 1984 levels here. And then finally, governments would have visibility and they would know each transactor and each counterparty they transact with. I mean, that's insane. They essentially have complete control over the economy. It's essentially where freedom goes to die. But thankfully, we've got Bitcoin. And with central bank digital currencies looming on the horizon, Bitcoin's value prop becomes even sharper. It's a digital Swiss bank account that cannot be touched or censored by governments. Bitcoin offers a way out of this dystopian novel. Well, I hope everyone found this valuable. Please feel free to drop in, give me some comments on what you liked, what you didn't like, and tune in next week. Thanks.